to back, and spinning on it back to back, on the turntables back to back, and spinning on it back to back, on it back to back, and spinning on it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to GPX the show. I'm your moderator for today, Asan, and with me, my esteemedly knowledgeable panel, Matt,
Hey everybody.
and the king of comedy, the most gracious host of us all, Tony.
I think you switched it up. I think
Yeah,
Nat was the gracious
Oh, what's it?
king
No,
of
that's the,
comedy.
no, that's the idea. That's the idea.
So
Matt's
Tony's the
like,
knowledgeable
Tony's
one.
funnier than me? Oh, no. I have nothing now. Also ironic because knowledgeable and Nat are two things I never thought I'd say.
Yeah. It's more like Tony's knowledgeable, and I'm just there,
You're a funny guy.
okay,
Good.
occasionally providing comedic support.
I
Yeah.
like funny guys. Funny guys, good, But gentlemen, thank you, Tony, for organizing this. Thank you, Nat, for joining. Let's start off right, hot and heavy, baby. Let's go get into it. First topic, and this just happened recently. E3 is canceled, and it's just not like my opinion of E3 being canceled. The ESA just announced that there will be no E3 2022 this year at all.
Oh, there's so much to say about this one, especially because E3 has been going down a dark path, in my opinion, the past few years.
Like the dark side. Yeah.
It's just say what you want about progressive issues and ideology and things like that, but I just think there's a big problem when we're shifting away from actually showing off new games, which was the intended purpose, to just these sort of bubbles of just people patting each other's backs and talking about their diversity accomplishments.
Just like a virtue signaling parade.
Yeah, and that's of course,
Did it become that?
the past few years there was definitely more and more of that. I think it was
Yeah,
a couple of
actually,
years ago it was pretty
Last E3 was pretty bad. I remember I saw a panel, and it was like a diversity panel, and there was no game talk, and I was like, what did I just watch? And I forget who it was. I think it was Ubisoft. It more or less feels like it was an Ubisoft kind
that.
of
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
right?
Because they really need to make sure nobody digs into them. I mean, of course, these things, diversity and all these things are very well and good, but I think the problem is we're moving away from the main focus, which is to show games and to show groundbreaking things. Those are earlier E3s from the 90s and the early 2000s. Those were special. And I know the internet's changed a lot, whereas we can get the coverage easier now. Things are uploaded so fast on Twitter and whatnot, but I still think E3 could have that place for breaking ground on new games, inviting people, inviting the press and some certain sections to try out these games. I think it has a place, but the way it's going, I don't know. Maybe it's better it got canceled.
I feel like, I don't know. I don't really know why it was cancelled. I suppose we'll come to that in a second. But like the whole way diversity is being handled is it's being made, just as a general point, it's being made way too obvious. Like everyone's like, diversity, look at it, it's really good, like look at all this diversity, whereas you should just be like, hey, this guy is from this country, all right, that's cool, get on with it, let's move on. Like like, you know what I mean? Like you should just be like, oh, we have all these different people on our staff because they have different experiences and whatever, but we're here to do games. Like, whereas diversity, or at least in some facets or some areas, like thrust it in your face, like this is so diverse, like, but the underlying thing is that you're trying to get like a game out there, a product out there.
Well, and I mean, there's a time and place for those kind of perspectives too. By the time E3 shows up, nobody brings up the stuff that was happening in Activision. Nobody brought up like Riot Games and their sexist environments. Like, why is it like studios that are doing somewhat okay? Why are they always the first to go up and champion this stuff? They should be calling out, CEOs and executives that are doing this kind of stuff, not like common workplace. It just feels backwards because I saw the industry look the other way for Activision. And I saw the industry look the other way for Riot Games. And E3 is not the time and place because people aren't tuning in to sort of like find out what's happening. It's not everyday news. No action is going to be taken. People are there to just like watch video games and celebrate. The craziest thing about it all is like for the past few years, everybody's been leaving it. Nintendo doesn't do E3. They do their Treehouse Live and they have a presence. Microsoft was the last supporter of E3. And Sony, for like 2 years or 3 years running, has said, no, we're not going to be at E3. The ESA charges a lot of money for stage space. It's become so just weird. Like, don't get me wrong, I love indie games, but everything is about indie games these days. I'm kind of getting tired. I want to see like AAA big budget titles come out. I want to see like that flash of E3. And the last thing I'll bring up is, I don't know if you guys remember, but Insomniac Games released Ratchet and Clank A Rift in Time for PS5. Immediately, there was an artist or designer who quit Insomniac, and he's like, I wanted the character to be gender neutral or something to that nature. I hope I'm not misconstruing what they said, but essentially they were arguing for the fact that Rivet, the new character, looked too female. And there's a whole thread of this, and I read this and I said, nobody, and if you do a little bit of digging, you find out that Rivet was created, the creative force behind Rivet was a woman. The person writing it was a woman. Like, do you mean like, why are these like why are these guys, and these are guys doing it, why are these guys trying to be white knights, why are these guys acting like such idiots? Like, the game's released, celebrate it, move on. Do you mean
It's like it's so strange. It's like yeah, that character should be more gender neutral, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is a blow. This is gonna set back all minorities like another 2 years. A woman wrote it. Don't worry about it.
Pretty much.
I think his argument was like, she wasn't supposed to have that many curves, or her eyes aren't supposed to look like so.
I don't know. Like, if you start like shoehorning that kind of stuff in game design, it starts being a bit odd. Like,
What I don't understand is, what's the difference between Rivet and somebody like Jessica Rabbit? Why is she being celebrated as a sex icon and empowerment icon? And then all of a sudden, if somebody else is trying to create something compelling or unique or cool, they're like, oh, it's too feminine. It's too male. It's too white male.
The only point I would make to argue that is just different timings. That's all. Because if Jessica Rabbit, I feel like, would come out today,
Oh, forget it.
Forget
It's not
about
gonna
it.
happen.
oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh, there would be a total meltdown. I feel like people would go nuts.
Yeah, it's sad because like E3 was so much more. And I think, why are we talking about this kind of stuff? Because this is the kind of stuff that led to the downfall of E3. This kind of like, we're not here to talk about games or get excited about video games. We're here to bring personal agendas. Bill Burr has a great bit about when he's sitting with Conan, and he's like, he's against like talking about Cancer Day at a baseball game. And he's like, you know why? It's like, if I take you to the theater and right in between the movie, I pause and I go, oh, Conan, I was molested when I was young, by the way.
I think I've
telling
seen
you-
that. Yeah, it's funny.
It's a good
and,
bit.
and it's I kind of get it, like, is it going to cause any action? And I'll be the first to say it getting dialogue out there, there's multiple ways to do it. And but you have to understand what E3 is. E3 is an event to celebrate video games, and if you don't have any big video games to talk about, then you're not gonna get enough attendance and tickets. You're not gonna get enough coverage. You're not gonna get big studios to come in. And I think Sony noticed that. Sony is like, hey, we can make a big E3 event cheaper and decide what we want to show, instead of having these massive press conferences and presents that are costing us a lot of money.
So, like, in terms of like the reason it was canceled, is it just because there was just not enough attendance, or like
They're claiming it's because of the pandemic, which has gotten better, but
what? Like,
It-
when is it? When was it supposed to be?
it's supposed to be in July.
Shit off. Like, yeah, the pandemic.
Or sorry, June.
The
But yeah.
the pandemic will be fine then. Yeah.
Yeah, I
As long
mean,
as
the
no new
pandemic's fine
variants.
now.
Yeah.
So
As long as no new variants show up, like, you're golden pretty much.
And the digital event didn't do well. That's another reason why.
well, again, yeah, I mean that I can understand, because if that's the point of it is the in-person thing. I get the digital event, they had to think of something quickly on the spot, but even with Nintendo, we talked about Nintendo doing Treehouse and stuff. I still don't think that's like the perfect substitute for that real on the floor interaction with the games. I think there's something about the energy at E3 And it's not even just E3. I've been for other videos, I've been watching a lot of Space World stuff that Nintendo used to do. If people don't know what that is, it went over under a few different names. Shoshinkai was one of them. Space World. These were Nintendo events, and it's interesting because you get to really hear like Miyamoto, for example, talk about stuff like the N64, which you don't really hear that even at E3 and stuff.
Right.
And it's just, I mean, in this one video I have up, it's from 1995. They're showing off the N64. Miyamoto's explaining all these things about the controller, why they have the memory slot in the back for the rumble pack and the memory card. And just there's like a nice atmosphere about it. It's very fun. And I think that's what E3 should be. It's like the Tokyo Game Show, the same thing. Bring the big games. Don't try to overcharge these companies.
Yeah.
And it should be easy on paper. I mean, yeah, it's hard to run an event, of course, but if you have all the big players there, how could you not have like this huge event and make it successful? You have to really try to not make it successful, which is what I think they're doing.
To your point, like even what you're talking about, talk about the event, bring your best games. It's sad, but all the indie developers do that. All of them are like working overtime, going crazy, trying to present their game in the best light possible. They're really trying to get their name out there. And these big companies are just like, they don't know what to do. And it's stupid. It's sad. I don't want to watch a diversity panel on E3. I want you to show me the new games you're working on. I want you to show me what's behind the scenes. And that's good enough. Do you mean like, and then sure, bring out the diversity panel afterwards. Sure, bring this kind of discussion out there. Have better moderators on your forums and have a different community manager. There are ways to enact that. But E3 became like the Oscars. It's just a bunch of people patting each other on their backs. And, I hate saying this expression, but they were smelling their own farts and clapping. And I'll tell you why this is so special, because like back when Halo 2 was announced, back when Half-Life was announced, Half-Life 2 and Metroid Prime 2 was coming out. I think that's one of the best years of E3. That was like 2004 for me. And funny enough, I actually IGN did like a great compilation, and I'm not joking. This is sitting on my desk, and it's like E3 Access, because like I was so in love with like getting this. I have this DVD.
Oh, one of those big boys, those big
Yeah.
DVDs. Yeah,
It's like
I
like
remember those.
like the Sony disc. It's got the GameCube and Nintendo disc. It's got the Microsoft disc in there. And it's so crazy. It's so full of like trailers in high quality, or at least back then with DVD quality was high quality. It's got the trailer for Twilight Princess, the first one with the Conan music in it. I was so hyped for E3. Do you mean like for me to go out and get this? I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. The Halo 2 trailer. Oh my God, this is so freaking awesome. And you know what? That's what made the industry grow. Now, if I was a kid at this age and I was watching E3 and I watched an hour-long diversity panel, I would be like, okay.
I'm brown. What's your point? Yeah.
It's like, yeah, where is it? Where it's like people are just talking and there's no like celebration, there's no acknowledgement. Part of the reasons why we can draw parallels with the Oscars is the Oscars failed because they're not acknowledging big genres that for years have carried the theater industry. They're not acknowledging action movies. There's no Oscar for best comedy. There's none of that stuff. Why is like a crappy MTV award pulling in more viewers? Because they have wacky and weird categories, and some of them are great. Best fight scene. Some of them are bananas and people love them. Best kiss. I don't care about that, but it gets people excited for movies. Oscars was, what is it? Like the Oscar for best picture? I don't know what it was. Like who cares? And E3, what's the moment of E3 I could think about last year? Anybody? Will you guys remember what's the biggest moment of E3? 2021. Same.
I remember trying to get on a GameSpot in like 2001 or 2002 or something. I don't remember. I was very young. And I remember they had exclusive E3 access, just $25. And I I couldn't get it, so I could only
Yeah.
see the pictures that they were putting on, and it was all for beta hardware and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's this? This is crazy. I think even for like the PS3,
Yeah.
when they announced it with the banana controller, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is huge. And yeah, I remember that. And I mean, retroactively, in terms of big moments, I think it was maybe E3 95. Maybe the first one was 95 or 96.
Yep.
I think it was 95 when Sony came out and they were like 199 and just like totally destroyed the Sega Saturn, because the Saturn, for those who don't know, was announced at E3 in the West. They're like, it's available today. And everyone's like, oh my gosh. And which is cool, but for retailers, it's a nightmare
Yeah.
because none of it's
They're
stocked
like,
or
what?
anything.
Holy crap, let's get out of here. We gotta put up stock.
Right. It already been out in Japan, I think, but they had just announced it, and they announced the price was like $299 or something like that. And then Sony went up and undercut them with those famous, famous last words. They undercut them by $100. And so that's kind of part of the reason the PlayStation got such a head start, was because they just
Nice.
cut the Saturn's legs off.
And we need moments like that, man. That's the best part.
Other game developers shanking each other in the
Yeah.
back.
Well,
Yeah.
even like with the Sony, I'm not their biggest fan, but when they did that thing with Microsoft, right, they're like, you guys how to share a game, and it shows them like
Yeah,
handing
it's
the
like-
game to each other.
I love that kind of stuff, man.
I wasn't like an avid E3 watcher. I'm sure I've seen like, bits and pieces from like a few of them, but yeah, I can't really remember off the top of my head. I was just always excited for like individual games and stuff, like the new Tekken, or even the new Xenoblade and stuff like that. Yeah.
I remember Tekken trailers vividly, man. It would just
Mhm.
be again Eurotrash music on stage and just like characters posing all muscular.
They didn't show like a lick of gameplay footage. Yeah, it was just all
Yeah,
like
no.
poses and Eurotrash. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's always gonna stay. It's going to be that E3 where, because Tony went into the past and you talked a bit about Tekken, I'm gonna try and pick something that's different, and it's the Twilight Princess reveal. Miyamoto coming out with a sword and shield. The E3 where Reggie was like talking about kicking ass and taking names.
Come on, just
I know. I was like, whoa,
Iconic.
is this Nintendo? This guy said ass on stage.
Mhm.
And we got to see Resident Evil 4, we got to see Twilight Princess, and man, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that E3.
The only reason I like the pre-recorded events is you eliminate the possible cringe
Yeah.
of like Wii Music, for example, when it's not working and your spine is twisting as you just pray that they get it right and it just doesn't go right.
Yeah.